Was it a while?
All right, guys, we're going to start our meeting. Thanks our core service for being here, Philip. We appreciate you. So if you guys have a sticky note, make sure you grab one of those so you can have questions. But he is going to answer your questions, whatever you guys have. Thank you for coming.
So thank you for asking me, Mr. Keith. My name is Philip Earhart. I'm the district ranger for the Ocoee Ranger District. We're here on the Cherokee National Forest. So we really want to thank you all for setting this meeting up for us to come to the east side of the county tonight to talk about the next steps for the Ocoee Whitewater. We unfortunately lost the Whitewater Center in 2022. We've been in a planning process ever since, trying to move toward what the next steps are going to be. So tonight what we're going to talk to y'all a little bit about is what we have pulled together, what we've seen, what we've heard, and then talk about what some of the next steps could be. This is not a final design, this is not a final plan. We're still seeking input, and that's what we're thankful you all are here tonight to give us that input. So we've got some folks here that are going to be available to answer any questions for you. So I just kind of want to take a few minutes and walk through how we got here, and a little bit about the process we're going through. So as I mentioned, we lost the Whitewater Center in 2022. It burned down. There was an investigation conducted by multiple agencies, but there was not a cause that we know of for sure what happened. So it's been inconclusive. But moving forward, we're trying to figure out what are the next steps and what can we put there that best suits the needs for the local community as well as the regional community. Because that is such an iconic site that was used for the '96 Olympics, and folks love it. And as working through this process and all the information that the University of Georgia did to gather information, we found out how much people really loved it and what they loved about it. So that's been one of the things we've done. There was a meeting that we had in January where we presented the same information that we're presenting tonight. Essentially, we've worked with a couple of different groups to help compile this information. Because to be honest, as the Forest Service, we understand that this is not always our forte, to go out and do public engagement and to compile this information. So what we did is we sought a group of subject matter experts to help us with it, to try to do it right. And it feels like that we really have this time, because we've had groups that are very talented working at different aspects that they're good at. One of the first things we did was establish a collaborative group. So instead of one person making the decision of what's going to be the next steps for Whitewater Center, there's a group of people doing that. That consists right now, there's a Polk County member at large, which is Derek Sloan. The Polk County Chamber of Commerce is represented by Lynn McCleary. Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and Tennessee State Parks is represented by Greer Tidwell. I see Angelo came tonight from State Parks. I really appreciate him being here. They're great partners for us.
I have a question. Is this posted anywhere in a website? Because, I mean, all this is going in one ear and out the other, and I can't write all these notes. Is it posted somewhere?
Yes, ma'am. And I'll give you that information. There's a QR code on the back that you can scan to get a lot of information. It'll take you to
I don't
that
do
website.
QR codes, so a website would be nice.
We'll make sure you get that this evening. From the Tennessee Department of Tourism Development is Jenny Beal. TVA is represented by Tom Barnett, and the Forest Service is represented by one person, that's Doug Byerly. So one of the first steps we did was conduct a public sensing, essentially, working with the University of Georgia and the Carl Vinson School of Government. The reason they were chosen is because they've got a group of folks that specifically goes after public engagement, and they were instrumental in working on some of the information that happened in Copper Hill as far as what happened downtown. They already had a lot of the connections with the folks, and so that agreement was put in place and they did a sensing. So we mentioned the QR code that goes to the compilation of all the data they got. They got over 7,000 responses talking about folks of what they were looking for the center. They gave us the goods, the bads, the uglies, and they were honest about it, and they compiled that information. That's the information that was taken that Studio Outside took to look at a site assessment for the site itself, what could it support. So I heard some other folks describe it as a Christmas list. What the Carl Vinson School of Government gave us was a Christmas list. That was what everybody wanted the site to be. But the site, unfortunately, can't support everything based on the size, logistics, all the stuff. So this next group, Studio Outside, took that and looked at it to see what could the site support. So that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. They took what was asked, they showed us what could fit, what are ways it could be rearranged and organized. So now we're seeking feedback on, did we hit the mark, essentially. We think we heard what folks were asking for, but this is a chance to provide feedback to see if we got to that. So as we move through tonight, I want you guys to know that there was a team of experts that worked on that. So one of the people that looked at the site itself and looking at what we could do with the water was Scott Shipley. And for folks that may recognize his name, he was a competitor in the Olympics. So he's got a very vested interest. And we want to really make sure that anything we're doing is true to what the center was and the history, because it's so important to all of us. And it was an iconic event that happened. So there's been a lot of thought going into that, as well as the design of what it could look like. So tonight, again, we're going to talk about what it could look like in the different site scenarios. When you walked in, you saw we've got a couple of different posters up around the wall. So there's one that's specific talking about the river recreation. So we're trying to figure out what are the ways that we can make better use of the river. As y'all know, when there's water in there for recreational release, that's when there's whitewater rafting and things going on. When there's not a recreational release, we've got folks that are swimming and using, splashing in the water. So we're trying to figure out what are all the ways that we can make the best use of that site year-round with the water. So folks like Scott took that into consideration, did a whole lot of work looking at the river, trying to figure out what are our ways we can use it with different flows and talking to TVA. The piece that I was really impressed with is that they really wanted to be true to the river itself and true to the Olympic course. So none of the things that we're going to talk about tonight that involve the river course or things we can do impact the site that was used for the Olympics at all. That site will remain as it was in the river. The next one you'll see is land recreation. So again, the site is used right now. I know for me personally, it's too cold for me to get in the water. But there's people picnicking and hiking there today. So what are the ways that we can better use the Whitewater Center for land-based recreation? So we put a lot of time and effort into looking at what that could potentially be. So we've got that set up in the back, you'll see. The next is the architecture there in the corner. I'm talking about what are the potential building options that can be utilized for the site. And again, we're not going to leave today with a plan, so you guys know that there's not going to be a final architectural drawing or rendering today for what it's going to look like. This is still very under development, but that's one side. And then we've got a corner here for just Ask the Forest Service. So if you've got a question for us about something that doesn't have anything to do with the Whitewater Center, that's where one of us will be glad to try to speak to you about that. In this large of a group, what we've learned is the best way for us to capture comments and make sure that we're hearing what you say is to get things in writing. So as Samantha mentioned, what works really well for us and we've seen is that the Post-it notes in the back. If you all will put any comments you got or questions you got and we'll stick it to the wall at the board specific to what you're looking for, that helps us capture that information and make sure it's taken back. So essentially, at the last meeting, did the same thing. Once all those are stuck on the board, we take a picture, we're able to keep it with the board, we take all those cards and we capture it. Then that will be compiled and it'll work for the next step. So we're not going to try to take questions from a large group tonight because I think it's better for us to have that interaction. So we'll just be scattered throughout the room once we get through this presentation and be glad to answer all the questions we can. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jesse English, who is the Forest Recreation Program Manager, to walk through the presentation.
Yeah, we'll do it. You're going to advance me?
I will advance.
All right. Me and Phil can try to coordinate. So this presentation was given by the Studio Outside, like Philip said. He went over a fair amount of information in here, so we'll skip over a little bit. But, first we wanted to kind of chart where we've been. Obviously it was built in 95, Olympics in 96, fire in 22. And then from that point on, we've been doing these engagements and assessments, like Phil talked about with the University of Georgia, with our collaborative group, and with our contractor Studio Outside. And then so today we're presenting some potential ways we can use the site, and hopefully this will inform how we move forward towards actually doing something on the site. So, like Philip said, we're just recapping how we got here, sharing probable programs and activities, and collecting your feedback. There's not a big reveal at the end, like he said. That'll come a little later, hopefully. But from this, we're hoping by the end of this calendar year, we will have a master plan that has some architectural renderings, might have that kind of nice reveal, and cost estimates and things, so we know how much this will be going forward, and then we'll go from there. Like Phil said, that's all the folks that have been involved. So this is an example of some of the stuff we did with the University of Georgia. Like I said, we have a QR code, all that's on the internet. We can download it. But the main thing was the survey was we were really trying to gather what do people like about the site, what did they wish the site did better, what are some things that you wish were on the site but were not on there. Just a lot of questions, and just trying to get that general framework of what people really wanted to see. And so they love it for the scenery and the recreation and the nature. They love the hiking and nature viewing and playing in the water. They wanted to learn about the wildlife, indigenous folks, flora and fauna, and of course the Olympic history of the site. Thought that the lack of food was a problem at the site. It being closed in the winter was a problem, the hours of operation, and the lack of overnight use. People wanted accessibility at the site. They wanted more bathrooms at the site. We will not have porta potties there anymore. When we do this, that is a major point of mine. Porta potties are not supposed to be permanent. They wanted food. They wanted space to have meetings and events for the county at the site. And then they love having the retail gift shop, going and buying a T-shirt, getting some ice cream, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the overall view of what people said in the survey. So they talked about food. They talked about wanting food trucks there. There's a lot of food trucks that serve the Whitewater community, that set up at the outfitters and provide them with food, and that's something that we want to make a space for out there. They talked about event space, and the covered outdoor event space was the main thing people wanted. They didn't necessarily want a big, giant indoor facility. They wanted to be able to be in the site and hear the river and all of that. So that was a big point that we saw in the survey. We met with our collaborative group and had some real kind of specific discussions on the site, and took all this feedback and tried to fold it into the plan. Some examples of what we did. So the site, what we looked at. So the Whitewater Center, you have several different modes depending on the season and how much water's in the river. So it gets kind of complicated. You have a lot of layers. And so, you have the land-based recreation, which is, just being out there, having the meeting space, the mountain bike trails, the hiking, the rocking chairs on the porch, that kind of stuff. But then you also have water activities based on how much water is in the river. You have a different set of things going on when it's low flow versus when you have the commercial flows going in. So we had to look at all of those layers. Okay. So one of the main things we did over the last summer, we kind of got to a point in the process where we're like, well, we really need to figure out what the floodplain is in this area. Because we don't want to get down a road where we're proposing things and then go back and do a detailed site survey and realize all that stuff doesn't work, because it's going to be underwater or it's not going to be near the water. So we did a very detailed flood study of the whole river corridor from the Blue Hole all the way down past the lower bridge with drones, and they had little submarines that were scanning all the pools with sonar, trying to get the whole picture. Because this corridor the rafting was laid out by hand. They built a model out at Sugarloaf Park and basically built it by hand, got what they wanted, and then scaled it up and put it in the river. So there wasn't ever any kind of modeling or computer, whatever. So this will allow us to do that. So we could say, okay, well, if a commercial flow is 1,400 CFS, what does that look like? What if we cut it in half? What does that look like? What if we cut it in a quarter and we had 200 CFS? So, what kind of low flow sort of stuff can we do? So we had to do that for a couple different reasons to do the study, and that was what we did a lot of last summer. It took a few months to get the water level right, to get up the survey. And so this is what that looked like. Mostly was how we expected, but it's good to have it documented. But there were some aspects of the site that there was water where we thought there would be water, and then there was water where we didn't think there was going to be water, and vice versa. So it was good to have that study. And we will use this going forward. It's also as important for any kind of permitting that we have to do if we're going to build closer to the river or alter any of the flow. We can use this to basically show that we studied it. So, for the site use scenarios, like I said, we've got, this is the existing conditions showing what is out there on the site already, going from the blue hole down to the rhododendron trail. That's basically the whole thing. We're not just looking at the side of the building itself. We wanted to look at the whole site. I was telling somebody earlier, we were always intending to do this, even before the building burned down, because we felt like the site was not being utilized very well. And so the building burning down, it was just kind of added to the scope of the study. But this was in the works probably a couple of years before the center actually burned. So this is just showing all the different assets that are on the site: the upper bridge, the old building site, the Oswald Dome Tower, Olympic course, lower bridge, that kind of thing. Nice. And this is looking at the different places from the flood study that we felt like, okay, we can build some things here. The site is very difficult, from a building standpoint, very long, very linear, not a lot of room. Have a lot of existing infrastructure already, but maybe not necessarily enough infrastructure to do some of the things that people would like to see, like lodges and all that kind of stuff. This place runs on a septic system. It runs on a well. It's one of the reasons the building didn't have sprinklers, was because it's on a well. We didn't have enough water to power our sprinkler system. So there's just some limitations to it as far as the infrastructure goes. So what this is showing is basically the architecture firm that we're working with, Lake Plato, which is a wonderful architecture firm, very highly regarded. Really glad we're able to get to work with them. They came up with, okay, this is what everybody told us what we wanted to do. This is square footages roughly that we think these things would take up in a building. All of the stuff that people want to do won't fit in the existing building site. So then we took that same piece, these little white and orange squares, and put them on the other places, and like, okay, there's not enough room to do all of the things we want to do in one building. We've got to kind of split the program out. So, next. So that's showing that same space on kind of the mid-course area, which is just parking right now. But we looked at it from, it's got high visibility, the parking's kind of already there. It's closer to the actual river, where the other site was kind of farther away up on the hill. It's midpoint. That's always kind of the struggle with where the old Whitewater Center was, is you just had your 15, 20 spots, whatever is there at the building. And then if that's full, you got to park all the way down in Egypt, to get to where you want to go. And so like, well, maybe if the building was kind of more in the center of the site, it might work a little better. So that's what that side is looking at. And then river left, of course, this is on the other side of the river across the lower bridge where the pavilion is. We have some space over there. It's nice, it's wooded, feels like you're in the woods right up next to the rock outcroppings and all that. But obviously, that's a tough spot. You got to get across the bridge to get over there. It's one-lane bridge, close to the floodplain. So there's a lot of constraints over there. And then we started looking at this lower site, which really is just kind of where the entrance of the site is now. There's not a lot down there. So there's lots of space over there. You can get to the river really easily, but it's also far away from the Olympic course and the Blue Hole, and it's a long way. We don't have any infrastructure down there. I don't even think we have any electricity down there. So we'd have to move a lot of the utilities or run it farther down the site. Okay. So the conclusions from all that were that access and program will not fit in any one site or even any two sites. And so they looked at, okay, when do we need to spread this thing out and have some stuff in different places along the river. So what we're looking at here is a proposal basically have we're calling it just generic names right now, but upper pavilion, have a visitor center in the middle, a middle pavilion across, we already have a pavilion there, but maybe would add onto it or expand the program there. And then have a lower pavilion down towards the end. There's blue points in the river as well that are talking about existing whitewater features, some we might improve, and then some proposed whitewater features that would be below the lower bridge. I'm not Scott Shipley. I'm not even like a kayaker, so I cannot talk to the level of detail that Scott can about what he's proposing on here. But the gist is, the Olympic course remains the same. The course everyone all knows and loves does not change. There are a couple things that maybe have worn over time or are not providing the same opportunity as they did when the course was built, particularly in the middle with some freestyle sections. And Scott's proposing to alter those, basically to restore a lot of that current to those sites. But the only actions taken in the Olympic course would be to improve it or restore it back to what it was, and then any added things would happen below the lower bridge. So this is talking about circulation in the site. So starting from downstream, we're potentially looking at moving the entrance to the site, so this lower pavilion is sort of off by itself. I'm not sure where it talks about it in the program, but we're envisioning that being in service to groups or even the Whitewater the Whitewater outfitters themselves. That if you're doing an upper end middle program, you stop there, you have a place to a pavilion, places to serve food. Even if you're just doing an upper trip, this would separate some of that traffic and get it out of Rogers Branch so that it wouldn't be quite as crowded. When you end an upper trip, you just end here instead of having to, go all around and into Rogers Branch. So moving the entrance over a little bit, parking all along the middle area there, and then that's the lower bridge. And then a new visitor center there in the middle. Potential of a third bridge in the middle. Some people like that idea, some don't. But it shortens a lot of the circulation, especially when you're walking around the site. It connects the visitor center over to the pavilion across on River Left, and it shortens the loop that you have to walk. Instead of going all the way up to the upper bridge and back down, you can have kind of a cutoff in the middle. So that's just an idea. I know people have different things about it. And then keep having the parking up at where the old building was. And then have entrances and exits at both ends. This is the river recreation. Like I said, I can't speak in specifics to exactly what all this means. But I trust Scott. I know he knows what he's talking about and cares deeply about this place and wants to do better. But the stuff lower behind the lower bridge, what we're really wanting to do is look at some of these lower flow features that will be present and can be used to expand the use of the site, so that it's not just full blast or nothing, but try and maybe find some way to do some kind of middle ground that would allow, that's an Olympic level course. That's for very skilled people, and it may be intimidating to somebody who's just getting into the sport, or to folks that have kids that can't necessarily, take their kids through there. I know I rafted it when I was 13, and I fell off right at the beginning, swam all the way through. So I'm aware of how intimidating all that can be. So having some lower flow features, the idea is to make the site more accessible, expand the use of it, and to kind of expand that recreation season through more areas. You got that? So this is zooming in on the upper pavilion. I think it goes a little closer than this. Yeah. So this is, we got all the icons of the different activities we want. This is that big event space that people said in the survey that they wanted. lots of rocking chairs, lots of flexible space where you can reserve it and do different events. You have your food, you have your picnicking, and restrooms. So there would be restrooms up here. The idea is not just to have events up here, but also to serve the Blue Hole. We know that we have to have restrooms up here if they're changing rooms for folks that are using the Blue Hole, and so we're hoping that this will make that a little bit easier and a little bit more accessible to use that space, and then also to give connection over the Old Copper Road.
One of the other key things this does is it lets us be true to the site of the original building. Keep some activation there so that we can tie that history back to it. And I think the architecture that we'll see moving forward will reference back to that, so that it maintains that integrity of that site.
And hopefully, part of this site assessment was an engineering assessment of the ruins of the site to see if the retaining wall was still sturdy and the foundation was still sturdy, and we're hoping that we can reuse it in some way to kind of leave that there and have it still be a part of the site instead of just deleting it and building something new. That's just the pictures, all the different types of things they want to. Some examples of some architecture they've done in some other places. And then the visitor center area here in the middle. So the idea here is that we wanted to connect closer to the river. We wanted to provide that retail space, the gift shop space. We wanted to provide some meeting space. We wanted to provide some office space, some operation space. The state parks is always running up and down 64, patrolling the river and keeping everybody safe, and they need some space to store some stuff. And so carried around with them all the time. So having some space like that here, and then kind of putting it in the middle of the site. So when you're there, you're seeing up the river, you're seeing down the river, you're watching the rafters go by, just kind of putting that building in the midst of things is the idea there. So Scott's given some examples of places he's done in other states that provide like steps down to the river or some kind of access to easily move in and out of the space and connect to it.
And again, some of the intentionality with that is how to use the site, not just when it's rafting, when it's in commercial flow. Get people down to the water easily on days when they just want to swim or splash.
And some of this green up here too on the north side of the river, a lot of that space through there is also just kind of a desert. It's hot, there's no trees, there's no vegetation. And so some of that goes into restoring some of that riverbank and giving it some more ecological function. And also making it a nice place to spend an afternoon.
But then anchoring back to that flood survey that Jesse talked about at length, that's the value of that flood survey now, is what can we put here? How can we build something that is resilient when the river floods? Because we know it's going to at some point. So a lot of thought went into that.
Go ahead. I've just shown you some other example photos.
So the one thing, that top left picture there, if you can see it, there was a lot of intentionality with the way they drew that potential rendering, how you walk through almost like a dog trot type scenario, where it's open. So when you arrive at the site, you're seeing the river itself versus walking straight into a building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really, really wanted to put all the focus on the river, is kind of the overarching thing of it, I guess. This is the middle pavilion. Some of the thought here is a lot of outdoor education space for schools to come out, do programs. We discussed kind of focusing Olympic history here, having maybe like some signs or kind of telling the story of the site and the Olympic program on the site, but really just mainly providing that sort of what it kind of provides now. I mean, the woods, feeling like you're sort of in the forest looking at the river. That's this side they really wanted to maintain a lot of the feeling of that space. So there's some examples of And then the lower pavilion, again, this is going to be smaller than the upper one, but a lot more focused on the outfitters, a lot more focused on smaller events where people don't necessarily want to be like in the middle or having a lot of other people come. They want a little bit quieter space. That would be what this is focused towards. So, zoom in. And so this would provide, different views of the river. It provides some of those access to some of those low flow features that we talked about earlier. Bus parking for outfitters to pick folks up as they get out, and access in and out of the river, so that you're not just pulling your raft up wherever, but actually giving you a proper takeout. And giving the Olympic course kind of an ending. That was something Scott talked about when they did the competition, that the course, a lot of courses have like a pool or something at the end where you can stop, and this one didn't. So there were even competitors in the Olympics that just went on down the road, because there wasn't anywhere to stop. So trying to fix some of that. Extend the walkway, having it be closer down by the river, kind of complementing the rhododendron trail across the way. All right. So that was the brief presentation, kind of where we are with the site. Like Philip said, we've got the posters up on the wall that are just blown-up versions of just like that. Will be stationed around. Please get, I think the post-it notes over here.
They're at the table.
At the table. And yeah, just look, talk to us, and put your comments down on the board.
I have a question. What happened to the course equipment?
We still have it.
The race. You still have it?
All the gates, everything, yeah. We still have
Are y'all planning any events in the near future?
it. Not right now, because of not really having the infrastructure out there to.
There's word of a possible Ocoee River Championship happening again. Do you guys have anything to do with that, or is that just on the boaters to organize?
It's one of the things that we would be essentially waiting for those folks to come to us to go through our permitting process, and we'd be glad to be partners.
All right,
Work
well,
through it, but we
send them your way.
haven't.
Well, actually, there's a national North American Open Boat Championship in Canada this summer, and it would be great if you bring it to the ocoee. But again, not letting the kayakers design the course, but make it accessible, because the Birmingham Canoe Club was a focus group back in the 90s for the construction of the course. And actually, the TVA engineer working with the course design was originally from Birmingham, and he was a racer. And like I said, the engineering firm came and made a full presentation to the club and wanted their feedback. And there have been open boat events on the ocoee. And like I said, keep that in mind when you're doing your design.
Yep. So people think, make sure to capture that with us tonight on Steve Note, so we can make sure that does get transferred up.
Yeah, all this, we will take photos. This will all go to the designers. All this feedback will go to them.
Is there a budget? I mean, I know we're doing all this work and all these things, but it's like, is there money?
That's the next step of what this is trying to figure out what we would like to try to do, what's feasible, and then get that master plan that would assign the budget to it, and that'll be the next step. So we're working through that.
Also,
Yeah, so with that, we'll break into the groups. And you can
one other,
grab what we
There's a group called Appalachian Regional Commission, and they do grants.
I want to know why none of the voting committee even knew about this meeting until this week.
not in this proposal.
See, I've been
Back